Game time, we diving deep. From the stairs to the play, no time for sleep. Below the surface, we're working, we set the scene. Who's your host? Scott Levine. Below the surface.
Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 10 of Below the Surface. This is the fantasy football show where we don't just skim the highlights, we dig into the stuff that actually wins you leagues. I'm Scott, your host, and today we're breaking down every single week one game, every fantasy storyline, every player trend you need to know. We're going to go game by game, starting from the Thursday night game all the way through to the Monday night game. I can't wait to go into each and every team and break down all the news. I love talking football. So with that said, let's just get right into it and dive in. The first game that we saw was actually the Thursday night football game between two division rivals from the NFC East division, the Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This was a crazy eventful game right from the start. We saw a player get injured out for season on the first play of the game on a kickoff. And then after that play happened, Jalen Carter spits on Dak Prescott, provoked by Dak. It looked like he spit previous to Jalen Carter spitting on him, but spitting on someone is disgusting, and that's a thug right there. Get that boy out of the league. The Eagles suck. Yeah, obviously, I'm a Giants fan if you can't already tell. I hope everything can go wrong with the Eagles season. Do not like Philly. But we'll start with Dallas, actually. They were the first offense to take the field, and Dak looked good despite his low fantasy output. I would keep an eye on Dak Prescott, a guy that I think you can be confident starting at certain weeks in better matchups. The Eagles are a tough matchup, as we know, even without Jalen Carter on that D-line. The Eagles, I believe, were best against the quarterback last year and top 5 against wide receivers. We'll see better outputs from Dak going forward. Also, George Pickens, I didn't like what I saw from him at all, man. He still looked like that immature diva that showed why he was traded away from the Pittsburgh Steelers despite he cost them that football game, in my opinion, completely. And the reason why he cost them that football game was actually he committed a penalty, and then on the next play, they actually fumbled the ball. He cost them a lot of yards. The penalty was very costly. And then also, credit to Dino Talk Sports. He showed this play of George Pickens just not giving full effort on one of his routes towards the end zone and not attacking the safety vertically enough and stretching the field, which led to him being able to cheat down on Jake Ferguson on that throw where he got cracked and he got his teammate hurt. If he gives that play full effort, that safety is going to have to drop off because George Pickens, that's what he does. He's a good deep ball catcher, and the safety is going to want to shade over the top of that. He didn't press hard after 5 yards because he knew he wasn't getting the ball that play, and I just think his poor play and effort cost them that football game. Along with this next wide receiver, superstar CeeDee Lamb, Darian Lamb. He had some crazy uncharacteristic drops in that game. Bad timing on one of the plays with Dak, and he had a big drop. And then on the last play where he just all extended out, that's a tough play. But obviously when you get paid top percent, you got to make those top 1% plays when you're paid like that. So he took the onus on himself after the game and said he's got to be better and he'll come out better in games going forward. And we should expect that. Just not what you wanted after a solid stat line. CD had 7 catches for 110 yards, and on paper that looks solid, but he left a lot of meat on the bone, a lot on the table there with his poor performance at the end and just those crucial drops in the fourth quarter. Javonte Williams for this offense, he looked good and he snuck into the end zone twice. He'll be good in the games he scored. Rico Dowdle was last year. He didn't really look efficient on the ground, but he looked like he ran the ball the best he has in a few years, so that was good. I still want to keep an eye on Jaden Blue as a stash. Miles Sanders getting caught on that run and then fumbling. That's never a good sign in week one. Jaden Blue could very well be the running back with the most juice in this backfield. So yeah, that's why I want to keep an eye on him despite him being a healthy scratch. Jake Ferguson, like I said, could have had that touchdown because of George Pickens' poor route on that play. And he'll probably be more involved in better matchups and higher scoring games. And games where they don't have 2 rushing touchdowns. Flipping over to Philly's offense, Jalen Hurts, man, he really impressed me. He looked really agile and quicker on the ground. He looked like he was working on his rushing and just being more versatile in the open field. I haven't seen that kind of burst from him in a while. He's clearly a locked-in starter every week. Despite only throwing 23 passes, he was still 20-plus fantasy points, and that's what you expect from Jalen Hurts. He can give you those rushing output games and the tush pushes when the passing yards aren't there. Saquon Barkley, he ran well despite his low rushing output. He looked good on the ground running the ball, but honestly, Dallas defense stepped it up a big time in the second half, holding him to 61 or 2 yards. Jalen Hurts actually outrushed him in this game, which is surprising any game that happens. And Dallas, I don't expect to be a great run defense, so we'll see about that. And of course, the Eagles continue to make moves. Howie Roseman just can't help himself going after players in the year, and they have a multitude of assets going forward with all these draft picks they have. So they made a move acquiring Tank Bigsby, running back from the Jacksonville Jaguars, to booster their special teams and running back room. Will Shipley got a rib injury, and they say that's not the reason they signed him, but you can't help but speculate that's part of it. A.J. Brown, I haven't mentioned him yet. Wow, tough game from him week 1, and not quite ready to panic on A.J. Brown yet. We know how good he is and how often they typically use him. Even when they pass the ball so little, he typically sees 30% of their limited targets. So in the games that they'll need to pass more, obviously this was a weird game with the weather as well, having to stop for a whole hour or so due to the lightning. That really cut the momentum for the offenses. There literally was like no points scored in that second half. It was awful after a very electric start to the season. Their defense will be better with Jalen Carter back next week, so that'll change things. They'll probably have a better start because Dak came out firing in the first half against them, and they looked great on offense before the weather delay. Will Shipley, I was very surprised by his on the first drive. Of course, he gets a rib injury and barely plays the rest of the game, and A.J. Dillon looked mediocre. So we'll see how they use him going forward. Devontae Smith, barely involved as well, but Dallas Goedert saw the highest targets for the team, and it wasn't even very valuable. We'll have to wait and see if Hurts can still have those high output passing games, because if not, it's going to be panic time for those Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers in fantasy this year. If Hurts is going to keep the ball on the ground as much as he did, and we know they love to pound Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley might just be another superstar year. He was out on all the third down snaps. They don't have Kenny Gainwell anymore, and mainly took those last year, so that's good to see for Saquon owners. He might just luck into about like 45 plus catches this year, which is just unbelievable on top of what he already does on the ground. All right, that's what I have for the first Philly game. Everyone else was really kind of irrelevant. I know Jahan Dotson had a play, but yeah. We're going to move on to the Chiefs-Chargers, and we're going to start with the Chiefs first. Patrick Mahomes, he looked like he was in Super Bowl form. He came out ready. He was fully laying out, making passes on the run. He was keeping read options for himself and looked great on the ground. His scrambling was like keeping them in the game, no doubt, rushing for a touchdown. Unfortunately, the Chiefs just can't get out of their own way. The friendly fire is ridiculous with this team. Another wide receiver, this time Xavier Worthy, bumping into Travis Kelce on a mesh concept. They just ran right into each other. I don't know whose fault it was. Either one didn't get deep enough or they didn't time it. But it really sucks to see a player like Xavier Worthy, who was going to have such a big role to start the season in those first 6 weeks with Rashee Rice suspended, and now we just don't know. It's all in limbo. It's probably 3 to 5 weeks out, and we don't even know if he's going to be at full strength the whole year. He might have to play with a brace. Surgery will probably be needed eventually this offseason as well. Just really sucks for a guy like Xavier Worthy, who showed a lot of promise in the back half of last year, and especially in the Super Bowl. Kelce, the guy who ran into Worthy, of course, yeah, he was pretty uninvolved in this game. If not for that touchdown grab on that play, he made a nice little route on that touchdown grab, but should have had another touchdown, honestly, and didn't look great, but with all these injuries and stuff, he'll probably luck into another decent fantasy season, even though he looked pretty underwhelming. Next player to bring up on the Chiefs has got to be Hollywood Brown. He was looking a little out of it early in that first quarter, making some bad drops and like looking a little bit out of sorts early, but he came on a little bit more as the game went on, and Mahomes just continued to feed him. It was tons of targets, 16 total targets he had by the end of the game due to the injuries. So we'll see how he's incorporated going forward. He's a must pick up on the waiver wire if he's still available in your leagues. And all the other guys, really, you got Tyquan Thornton, who looked exciting on some deep routes. Mahomes felt comfortable with his guy that he knows, Juju, over the middle, and he looked like he was picking up for those extra targets that Worthy might have had as well over the middle of the field on those nice plays that they designed. The running game didn't look great. It really looked like a committee backfield. The bell cow job that it looked like Pacheco would have had last year is no longer here because of his injury last year, and they seem to want to involve Kareem Hunt at least early on. And Brashard Smith getting on the field was a great sign, and he's a guy I want to keep an eye on going forward this whole year. Mahomes is always tremendous with his backs, and obviously with all these wide receiver injuries, you're going to want a receiver out of the backfield to make plays. And Kelsey being older in age, he's not as explosive over the middle of the field. So you're going to want a player with some juice out there, and Brashard Smith can be that guy. They had an underwhelming game, and Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to put a lot on his shoulders. The Chargers, what a different story compared to their final playoff game. Completely taking that game and using it and motivating them. Justin Herbert, absolute masterclass in his first game, especially against a division rival. Big game, week 1, coming out, going overseas to Brazil, playing in unfamiliar territory, 300 plus yards, 0 design runs, but unbelievable scrambling, 7 scrambles. He looked great running as well on those scrambles. Really interesting game plan out of Greg Roman. You think this is a run-first offense. We've seen in the past how great they are running the ball. They actually didn't look good running the ball this game, but their pass protection was phenomenal. Gotta mention my guy, Quentin Johnston. I'm a huge fan of Quentin Johnston. Really high on the kid coming out of TCU. Love to see the great first week out of him. There was a lot of negative signs coming in, and for him to play well, it was great to see. Like, you had Keenan Allen come in. They drafted 2 rookies. Keandre Lambert-Smith was receiving some hype, and then they had another pick, Trey Harris, who was their higher pick, who people were very excited for. And then for Ladd's ascension and their first round running back, Omarion Hampton. But Quentin Johnston cast off for dead, had the concussion injury as well, and people were worried about that, but he came in and he has a different skill set to Ladd and Keenan Allen, being able to stretch the field the way he can, and he should have almost had 3 touchdowns, honestly. He's able to stretch the field vertically, which is another dynamic that Herbert can add in. So Quentin Johnston definitely needs to be on rosters, especially teams with injuries who got banged up, like Worthy owners maybe, or guys who had a tough bench. Quentin Johnston, he's a guy I would put some fab on, or if I had the top bid, he would be definitely a guy I would bid on. Keenan Allen, man, he returns back to the Chargers and picks right back up where he left off. Very exciting to see that for him. He was waiting to sign all offseason. The Chargers wanted him back. He has that great connection with Justin Herbert that we know and love, and he looks like he's an easy flex play right now. There's a lot of good options in this offense. Obviously, not every game he's going to throw for 300 plus yards and 3 plus passing touchdowns. There will be the floor games for Keenan without a touchdown, about 8 to 10 points. But he looks like he's a safer play, and he looks like a consistent third down option for this offense. He's that third down merchant, and that's what you want to see. Maybe Ladd will eventually get into that role later as the season comes on. But yeah, let's move into Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, he looked great in man coverage, man. He was making guys look silly out there, getting himself open. So much separation on his routes. Loved his game out of college. Great rookie year. And he continues on in his sophomore year. He had 1 missed pass target towards the end zone, and that's just disappointing that Herbert was unable to connect with him. It would have been a huge game for him week 1, and he looked great out on the field. I'm expecting a lot bigger games from him this year. Do not panic on Ladd. Don't look to move him at all. He's a locked-in starter. Omarion Hampton, their rookie running back, he looked just all right on the ground, but his pass blocking was phenomenal. The run blocking, he wasn't getting a lot of push up front, and obviously with a guy like Chris Jones, he's a tough guy to move. And the Chiefs, yeah, they really couldn't get much pressure in the pass game at all, but in the run game, they looked fine. The only plays they really made up for when they blitzed, and that was the only plays they really affected Herbert. It seems that the split with Najee Harris, the other running back on the Chargers now, in his first game, especially with the eye injury, he looked pretty mediocre in pass protection. He wasn't getting much of the snaps either. I'm expecting a much better production from Omarion Hampton going forward, and he's a locked-in starter. Don't worry about his week 1. I really liked what I saw from him. And that was our Friday and Thursday games that I just covered. And with that, we'll come right back and I'll talk about the 1 o'clock slate. And then we'll move into our 4 o'clock and night games. And finally, the Monday night game. But I'll be right back with you guys. All right, getting right back into our 1 o'clock slate. Let's start with the Buccaneers and the Falcons game. What a finish in this football game. Right down to the wire, missed field goal, heartbreaking ending for the Falcons fans, but a great finish nonetheless. I'll start this one off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They came out on offense very flat in the first quarter, especially 0 points through the whole first quarter. Baker talked this man up all offseason, and so did this guy. Huge fan, Emeka Egbuka, my guy. I drafted him in fantasy, reached on him in the 5th round, took him as high as the 5th round. Believe so much in this kid, and man, did he have an impressive rookie day. Baker found him for his first touchdown, a 20-plus yard reception. Looked great over the middle of the field, getting open. He's just going to be such an impressive player all year long. No one's going to be looking to trade this guy after week 1. So that's exciting for those fantasy owners who did draft him. And he's just going to be a locked-in every week starter for you guys. The Buccaneers are a great offense. And with Chris Godwin out for these first 4 weeks, Jalen McMillan out for the first 9 to 10 weeks with that terrible neck head injury, and Mike Evans aging, it looks like it's time for Mike Evans to pass the torch to Emeka Egbuka, their first round rookie pick. Man, is he so exciting. And then we saw a report today that he said in the huddle it's going to be open, and he caught that game-winning touchdown to take the lead back. Just such an impressive player. Then also we saw Bucky Irving. He looks great every time he touches the ball, man. He's so electric when he gets the ball. He got a touchdown, of course. His rushing efficiency on the ground wasn't great, but man, he makes guys miss. He gets those cuts and gets extra yards. Bucky's going to be a guy that's locked in all season long as well, obviously. Mike Evans, classic Mike Evans game, 5 for 51. He'll be better with a touchdown, and he'll have those consistent floor weeks. 10 points, full PPR, and ain't nothing to snuff at in week 1, especially with the poor production from most of those top-end wide receivers this first week. There wasn't much else to talk about really on this Buccaneers offense. With the Falcons, there is a bunch of news, honestly, with this team. Darnell Mooney was a late inactive this week with that shoulder injury, and that led to Drake London seeing 15 targets. And now moving into Drake London, he should have had a better fantasy output based on his targets. He had 8 catches for only 55 yards, but he was seeing a plethora of red zone and end zone targets. 4 in the red zone and 2 in the actual end zone. He should have actually came down with a touchdown on the play he got injured, which really sucks to see. It was a minor AC shoulder injury. We'll see if it keeps him out. They might just be able to put an injection into his shoulders to numb it for the game, and he'll be able to play through it. But if not, it'll be like 1 to 2 weeks at max. Obviously, you don't want to see Drake London go out. And if Darnell Mooney is active, you could even get him into your lineup as a flex next week. But sticking with this game, on that first drive, man, it looked like everybody's fantasy darling, Bijan Robinson, the expected RB1 by many, looked like he was about to explode in the first week of the season for this fantasy season. He took a screen pass from Michael Penix 50 yards to the house. I was playing him and my heart sunk to my chest. I wanted this guy to fall to me at pick 4. I wasn't expecting it to happen. It didn't happen as I played him in week 1. But after that, it was tough sledding for Bijan. He is heavily involved in the passing game. He saw 7 targets, 6 catches, 100 yards receiving, and a touchdown. Just incredible production. And unfortunately, nobody on this Falcons offense just was seeming able to get anything going on the ground. Everybody was below 4 yards a carry, and both running backs were sub 2.5 yards a carry, and that's terrible. Obviously, we know Vita Vea is such a great run stuffer, but I'd have to go back and watch the O-line closer. I know they lost Drew Dalman to the Bears, who was a great run blocking center, and then both their starting and back left guard and their star left guard, Caleb McGarry, expected to miss significant time, and that's a brutal loss to this rushing attack. They clearly seem to be missing those 2 guys in week 1. Michael Penix, heck of an effort on that rushing touchdown. Went Superman on that play, looking like Michael Vick out there. Just a solid game from him. He threw the ball 40 plus times, and that's great for those pass catchers. Kyle Pitts, heavily involved, 8 targets. Yeah, Kyle Pitts saw a really nice target share with 8 targets in the first game, 7 catches for 59 yards, doing his thing out there. He looked good when he caught the ball. Games where he scores a touchdown, he'll be very effective. Is this the year of the Kyle Pitts breakout? We'll see. And that's mainly it for that game. Let's move along into our next game. This next game was a real ugly one. Not what you would expect. Honestly, maybe exactly what you'd expect. And that's from the Cincinnati Bengals and Browns game. And man, can these Cincinnati Bengals just not start the season on a good note ever. They get the win, which is huge, but they should have easily lost this game. And their offense looked putrid, especially in the second half. 7 total yards, guys. 7 in the whole second half. That was their offensive production. You're telling me an offense with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, Noah Fant, Gesicki, Yoshivash, All these guys get 7 yards in the second half. T. Higgins, 3 catches, 30 yards. Lamar, 2 catches, 20 yards. This is embarrassing to look at. I don't know what was going on. They got sacked 3 plays in a row. Myles Garrett getting 2 sacks in a row and pressure on the third, I believe it was. Actually horrible to watch. I think you can just throw this game in the trash. The Bengals somehow can't start the season hot week 1 ever. Doesn't matter, I guess, if they play in preseason. Doesn't matter if they don't play in preseason. If they have guys signed. If they don't have guys signed. Week 1 seems to be their death knell. And especially for Jamar Chase, Denzel Ward. He can't seem to have a big game against him for some reason. So be careful that week. Hopefully he rebounds in that second game because, man, that's tough to see. Only 26 yards for a player of that caliber. 5 targets only. I don't really know what was going on in that game. And then for the Cleveland Browns, they really just tried to slice and dice this Bengals defense. Just take it 2 to 4 yards at a time. Get the right amount of yards necessary for every play. Not lose yards, just stay on schedule. Joe Flacco, he looks at his first read, he glances at his second read and right to the check down if it's not there. He's not playing around at all. And he was very timely with his third down conversions. Whenever they needed 3 yards, they would pick up 4 for first downs. Or whenever it would be a 3rd and 3, they would pick up 4 yards on third down. Or just like that. They needed 2, they picked up 3. And it just continued to go like that throughout the game. They ran the ball actually very inefficient. It was a pretty horrible output. Jerome Ford, he looked completely washed. And Quinshon Judkins, they'll be happy to have him back. He just signed with the team. Dylan Sampson, rookie. I was high on him. I made a video about him this offseason. He was one of my rookies that I wanted you guys to watch. He really impressed in the receiving game. 8 targets. He looked locked in as that 2-minute drill or eventual third down role that he'll overtake throughout this season. He wasn't on the field on a ton of third downs in week 1, but he was seeing a ton of check downs from Flacco. As long as Flacco's in the lineup, Sampson, he can be a flex play for you or like a back end RB2 if you don't have a great running back. If he's drafted, say, like a Caleb Johnson, he's definitely a guy I would be looking to spend a lot of money on the waiver wire if he's there. He's definitely like my number 1 pickup right now. And then another guy in this game, Harold Fannin Jr., another rookie. This kid is actually from Bowling Green out of the MAC conference. They drafted him in the 3rd round, and he seems like a weapon that they just want to have out on the field. He saw a ton of targets in this game. Actually out-targeted David Njoku in week 1, even though Njoku had more snaps than routes run, I believe. But it's just great to see him so utilized and that he's such a weapon for them already. This whole offense, obviously with Flacco, way more intriguing. A lot of targets to go around. Jerry Jeudy, he had a solid game. He'll be a solid flex option, and he'll be better in the games he scored. Cedric Tillman, another guy who really impressed me in week 1. Last year, Cedric Tillman, he had a nice stretch of games with Jameis Winston before he got injured with a concussion injury and they didn't bring him back. But he looked good on the field last year. And I'm very impressed with what I saw again. He got a touchdown. He looked good. 8 targets is great from him. So I'm excited for his future. He can easily get into your lineup as a flex, especially with injuries or bye weeks down the line in the season. A guy I'm very excited for if you drafted him late round. He should have a prominent role and might be closer to Jerry Jeudy than we initially thought. And then David Njoku, he didn't have the greatest output, but we should expect that Joe Flacco, David Njoku connection to heat up eventually. As long as Joe Flacco continues to play for this offense, honestly, multiple people in your league can have Browns players, and that's not even surprising. This will be the 3rd straight season where he's had high-end fantasy options. And shout out real quick, my boy Rocket Sanders for getting a touchdown. Go Gamecocks. That's all I have for this Cleveland Browns game. The next game was a real stinker, especially as a Giants fan. Daniel Jones comes out and plays a freaking masterclass. Scores on every single possession, never done before in the history. Like, of course he does, right? 2 rushing touchdowns, throws the ball deep great. I saw a nice deep ball to Alec Pierce on the sideline. He hit Michael Pittman for that 27-yard touchdown, which was a really nice pass. I was surprised by how little Josh Downs was involved week 1. But Tyler Warren, if you picked him, he looks like a great pick. I actually started to come around on Tyler Warren as the offseason went along. He looked great in the preseason, was heavily involved there. And eventually he'll maybe get even some touches in the red zone. Might even be involved as a trick play guy, throwing some passes. He was a high school quarterback, if you didn't know. Just a very versatile player for them, and he looked really good on the field. Jonathan Taylor, he looked great. He played almost every running back snap. The only clear handcuff is DJ Giddens if you do want to have the handcuff if you're in a deeper league or want a running back to stash just in case he were to get hurt. But yeah, he looked great. He just missed out on a touchdown run. He got stopped at the 1, and Daniel Jones vultured 2. In the games he scores 20 plus easily. He looked great out there. You're not going to get to play the Dolphins every week, But Jonathan Taylor, we know he's a great player, so he'll be an every week starter as long as he's healthy. For the Dolphins, man, I don't think it could get much worse for Dolphins fans seeing this game. It looks like the team is just lost. The coaching staff looks like they lost the team. And then, of course, I've talked about this over the summer, how poor this Miami secondary was, and man, did it show. They got banged up over the course of this offseason, as well as lost guys in free agency and traded away Jalen Ramsey. This defense is just going to be such a liability. And it wasn't even just their fault. Tua continuously put them in awful spots. He turned the ball over multiple times. I think it was 3 total. 2 terrible picks and a fumble. You just don't like to see that. All of Tua's weaknesses were just clearly on display in this week 1 game. And then the only bright spot, which was a guy that I was super high on all offseason, was Devon Achane. So it was good to see him still play well, and he's still going to be effective in this offense. Really the only one I feel completely confident going ahead as a starter. Jalen Waddle picked up right where he left off, of course, getting banged up in a shoulder injury. It's like clockwork with this guy. He just can't stay on the field for some reason. His body is just not built for football, it seems. And even though I was really high on him this year and I expected a big breakout back into a clear fantasy starter option and a top 20 player potentially, not seeing that through the first week, and looks like he's going to be limited, maybe even in the next game due to that shoulder injury. Tyreek Hill, he had an all right game. He looks like he lost a step though. He doesn't look like the same Tyreek Hill we know, and maybe that's just him wanting to get out already. There's already rumors of him out there about teams interested from the Steelers and the Chiefs. They would just be going all in on this team with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey and all these older players, and just have like the oldest roster in football making a push. But the Chiefs makes complete sense. Obviously, no Rasheen and the Xavier Worthy injury, and he'd fit right in with Mahomes and look right back to his same self. I would love to see him back there. That's what these Tyreek Hill fantasy football managers got to hold out hope for, is that he gets traded and moved, because it's not looking like this Dolphin season is going to be anything productive. And then also Waddle managers, I want to hope for Tyreek Hill to leave, because that'll just open him up for the clear target hog. Yeah, this game was completely dreadful, and that's why we're going to move on to the next game. This game was a little bit more exciting, but not very high scoring. The Raiders-Patriots game. It was good to see Ashton Genty in his debut. Glad to see he got a touchdown, but man, this Raiders offensive line is very poor, and he had less than 3 yards per carry, 19 carries for 38 yards. That's unacceptable to me as a first round pick as high as he was, expected to carry the bell cow role like he should, and that's just not good enough. You got to be better than that, Ashton. I'm hoping in these next few weeks he'll figure some things out. They'll settle in. The offensive line will be a better communication or whatnot, and he'll just find his rhythm, because even in that first preseason game, he didn't look great either. Negative yards in a preseason game, you never want to see that, especially from a guy drafted as highly as that. It wasn't really completely his fault. His O-line is just not good, so we'll see how he's able to overcome that. Also, the Raiders had a bit of an injury scare. Brock Bowers got taken out of the game, and his snap share, even before he got hurt, was just really weird to me. They were playing him sparingly and using Michael Mayer quite a bit. So that's interesting. He looked great every time he caught the ball, though, and Brock Bowers is just a locked-in, clear tight end one. You're not going to look to move him. You're not going to not start him when he's healthy, and hopefully he is healthy. And he said he would have been able to go back out there, but the medical staff kept him out. So hopefully that's accurate, and Brock is good to go for week 2. Then Jacoby Myers, another guy who's just so underrated, continues to just be that guy. Great game. Had a lot of targets. Geno Smith felt comfortable with him. I'm glad they kept him around. Dante Thornton, another guy to keep your eye on, under the radar guy. He had only 45 yards receiving on 2 catches. He's got some big play upside for sure. 22 yards a catch. That's very exciting. Trey Tucker obviously had the touchdown. And Jack Besh, he actually got out on the field and had a 23-yard catch, which is nice to see. I'm a big Jack Besh fan, and I know the reports over the summer weren't great, so I'm going to keep my eye on him as a deep sleeper. Hopefully he breaks out later in the season. But then, yeah, like I said, Michael Mayer getting a lot of snaps. He actually looked good out there, and he saw 4 targets and caught all of them. Brock Bowers, 100 yards receiving. Just incredible player. We'll have to hope to see that the rushing game can improve. Geno Smith, also, yeah, he's just a nice quarterback. He clearly is an upgrade to what they had last year. This could be a solid Raiders season. Now, on the flip side, for the New England Patriots, Drake May, they let him throw the rock a ton this game. 46 passes. That's a lot, man. But the running game, they just couldn't get it going. And Drake May really didn't take advantage of his legs the way he did last year, which is disappointing. I wish that he would have been more involved in the running game and maybe looked to run a little bit more, especially when they were doing so poor on the ground. Trevion Henderson only got 5 carries. He had a decent output on those carries, 5.4 yards a carry, but you would hope to see a little bit more touches for the rookie, especially going forward. And then the biggest surprise of them all has got to be Kayshon Boutte. This is a guy that I've loved since college. I've been so high on this kid dating back to his LSU days. I literally thought he was the next LSU great, and then he tears his ACL, and then Malik Neighbors overtakes him as the clear wide receiver 1 on the team, and he falls all the way to the 6th round. Doesn't have a great year, but his first year with Drake May, in those games with Drake May, he was projected for 90 plus targets on pace if they played every game together, and this first game, 8 targets, 6 catches, 100 yards. He should definitely be rostered in your fantasy leagues. Sign for wanting to pick up Boutte has got to be their rookie receiver who was receiving a good bit of hype pre-draft. I don't know as much in the training camp. Trevion was just masking all the other hype for other guys, and Demario Douglas actually was getting so much hype. But their rookie wide receiver, Kyle Williams, only 5 total snaps. Unbelievable to me. 1 target, 1 catch, 12 yards. That's unacceptable for a guy in a receiver room that's not that crowded. This receiver room has no real superstar. Diggs is coming off that ACL tear, and then obviously Boutte, Mac Hollins, himself. Yeah, not many guys to really have to outdo, and he just couldn't get himself on the field, which is very disappointing. But also very exciting for Kayshon Boutte fans like I am. And he had 100 yards, one of like only 6 players to have 100 receiving yards. So hell of a start to the season for the kid. And I'd definitely be interested in rostering him if you have a clear droppable player. Also, moving along to another wide receiver, and that's Pop Douglas. He actually had 2 catches for -2 yards somehow, but he did a touchdown and did see 2 end zone targets, which is really great. I'm very excited for Pop Douglas this year. Hopefully, this was just a fluke. I don't really understand how he had -2 yards. I'll have to go back and look. Another player that could be a flex at some point, just to keep an eye on him. I wouldn't drop him yet if you have him on your team. And then Stephon Diggs, yeah, he'll be slowly worked in, and he had a good start, 6 catches for 50 yards. That's a solid game without a touchdown. In games that he has a touchdown, he'll be a really nice piece to have. He's definitely a borderline flex play. Ramondre Stevenson did outtouch Henderson on the ground, but I expect that to change moving forward. And as we saw in the receiving game, he was clearly more involved in the receiving game than Ramondre. All right, so that's all I have on the Patriots now. Let's move into the Cardinals and the Saints game. And this was a game that I barely actually saw, but I will touch on the game and comment on what I did watch. Kyler Murray, he looked all right. He looked pretty comfortable out there, and he was moving around well. Solid game. Not great passing the ball, but solid game nonetheless. Marvin Harrison Jr., though, very impressed with his output. He had a 6-target, 5-catch game. Great to see him hauling 5 or 6 targets. And then he saw a nice design crossing route on the goal line, and he caught a touchdown pass. Also, Kyler just chucked it up to him, let him do his thing, let him make a nice boundary catch, deep ball, 45-yard catch. Really nice play. Looked like the Marvin Harrison Jr. back in Ohio State, who was able to constantly make plays down the field, and I'm hoping for a big season for Marv. I expected it, and I said by the end of the season he could overtake Trey McBride. We'll see if it happens earlier than expected. Trey McBride, another guy, he had 9 targets. I'm not worried about Trey McBride. 6 for 61. He tends to struggle to get in the end zone, so not surprising that he didn't score a receiving touchdown. But Trey McBride locked in tight end going forward, no doubt. No real other wide receiver weapons on this team that are interesting. Trey Benson, definitely a guy to keep your eye on. Holy cow. Unbelievable rushing production out of him. Finally, kid was drafted highly, 2nd round pick for them, 2nd RB drafted in his draft class, and he had a really underwhelming rookie year. First game, 8 carries, 69 yards. That's actually phenomenal, man. And yeah, he didn't score, and it's only 8 fantasy points, but he's a guy I'd be stashing, and if he's somehow on your waiver wire, that'd be crazy to me, but definitely hold on to Trey Benson. Don't let him go. James Conner, he does get into the end zone. Kyler gave him a receiving touchdown, and that saved his day. He was really inefficient on the ground and very uncharacteristic of James Conner, honestly. We'll see if that can change, or if Trey Benson can really eat into his workload, and it'll be a real split this year. James Conner and the whole coaching staff were talking up Trey Benson, and it looks like like they're right. He looks good. Kyler also hitting 35-plus rushing yards in his first week. That's great to see. Hopefully he's able to keep that rushing production up and hit 50-plus yards in some games and score some rushing touchdowns like he can. On the other side of the ball, though, we had the New Orleans Saints, and just a tough team to buy into. Alvin Kamara, he was just not targeted like he normally was with Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler threw the ball 46 times, yet Alvin Kamara only saw 2 targets. That's like unheard of in the Saints offense. Usually he's the one getting 8, 9, 10-plus targets in games where they throw the ball at some. He looked all right on the ground, and he did get in the end zone, so that's great to see for Alvin Kamara, but definitely a little bit to worry about there. And then they did get both Devin Neal and Kendre Miller some touches as well behind him. He only saw 11 carries and 2 catches, so 13 opportunities is not enough for his price, and that's why I was a little bit worried about him. Things could definitely change, but I expect this team to be down a ton and not running the ball as often as you'd think. Moving into their receiving core, though, Juwan Johnson leads all receivers in yards. Very impressive stuff out of Juwan Johnson. Not something I expected at all, but in a condensed offense with as few receiving targets as they have, they're going to need somebody to step up. And Juwan Johnson, definitely a guy that you could look into rostering if you drafted poorly at tight end. I don't personally think I'm going to be picking up Juwan Johnson, but he definitely can be rostered. Chris Olave, this man just can't play a full 4 quarters, it seems, I guess. In the medical tent for a few plays here and there, but saw 13 targets, and that's just unbelievable. That's exactly why you drafted Chris Olave where you did. If you got him in the 6th or even 7th round, that's exactly what you want to see from him, getting that many targets. That was a 28% target share for Chris Olave in week 1. And yeah, he only saw 7 catches for 54 yards. But in these PPR leagues, he's a safe floor flex that will probably be very consistent all year. And in the touchdown games, we'll probably see that upper echelon 19, 22 range. Olave is not really a guy who hits 25 plus or can hit those ceiling 30 games. But the 20 plus games should be coming, especially when you're seeing that much targets. Big plays will come with Chris Olave. He's a good player. Rashid Shaheed also saw a ton of targets, but obviously it's going to be very inconsistent in this offense. Spencer Rattler, he's not a very accurate player at this moment in his career. There'll be games where Rashid Shaheed will have his 1D play, but it looks like Olave's his go-to guy. Finally, the most exciting game on slate. Who would have thunk it? The game where Aaron Rodgers comes home to MetLife Stadium to take on his former Jets, and Justin Fields opened his debut against his former team. And man, did these quarterbacks come out with a vengeance. This was so awesome to watch. Aaron Rodgers, 240 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns, just pacing up the defense. It was really a nice game from the Steelers overall. They really had to battle back in this game. Looked like they were out of it. They got attacked hard right from the get-go, and they were resilient. It was really nice to see that. They're such a well-coached team under Mike Tomlin, and they play so hard for him. Jalen Warren, he was their locked-in starter. They paid him this offseason, and he's their best pass protector they have, and they feel confident with him as their starter right now. But, of course, you always have to have a wrinkle with Arthur Smith, and Caleb Johnson barely sees the field at all. Actually fumbled in this game and had negative rushing yards, so not a good debut for the rookie at all. Kenny Gain ended up seeing more snaps and targets and touches than Caleb by a lot. He was out there quite a bit on 3rd downs and used as a weapon for Rodgers out of the backfield. He actually saw 3 catches on 4 targets, only totaled 4 yards, but he was out there quite a bit. And not much production from Jalen Warren in this game, but the biggest story was, honestly, all of the role players just getting it done for Aaron Rodgers. He had 4 touchdowns passing, and none of them were to DK Metcalf, so that was really interesting to see. But Calvin Austin, he looked good, 4 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown. Jonnu Smith, he got into the end zone on that touch pass and just reached out and got in. Jonnu might be a little bit underrated, even though he didn't have a huge production this week. He had 5 catches, which is nice to see on 6 targets. He might be a little bit underrated. Sometimes I saw him going undrafted in certain leagues, and teams with a lower tier tight end production might want to keep an eye on Jonnu, especially after the season he had last year. He's definitely a quality player in this league. Ben Skoranek, he scored his 2nd touchdown ever. Not a guy we're really caring much about at all. Caleb Johnson, though, make sure you hang on to him. I know it sucks that you picked a guy as high as you did and him to be just going out there and doing nothing. That definitely breaks your heart as a drafter. You always want to see your guys have an early impact. With this kid, it might take a little bit of while. They're saying his pass protection isn't great, and with Aaron Rodgers to get on the field, you're going to have to pass protect well. So that wraps up our Pittsburgh Steelers. Now let's flip over to the New York Football Jets, who actually came out looking phenomenal A lot of people were worried this offseason about Justin Fields. He looked a little bit slow in camp. It wasn't looking very polished on paper, especially in the preseason. Justin Fields, he looked like he had full command of this offense, and what he can do on the ground is just such an asset for an offense. He finished the game with 12 carries, 48 rushing yards, but got in the end zone twice on the ground. And that's just what he can do for an offense. His rushing floor is incredible, and for fantasy, it's even better. I was able to draft him, and I'm just so excited for him this season. What he can do on the ground, he's shown that he can be a top 3 fantasy quarterback because of his rushing upside, and that was exciting. He also looked to have a great connection going with Garrett Wilson. As expected, dated back to college, and he's the clear alpha in this offense. He scored a touchdown, and he almost had a second one. He got stopped really short of the goal line, and that was just unfortunate. Breece Hall, though, a lot of people counted this kid out, and I loved what I saw on film and just in the box scores, obviously. 19 carries, and he also had 2 receptions, 4 targets, 23 opportunities, 21 touches. That is awesome for Breece Hall, and he looks like a locked-in PPR stud back again this year. His efficiency was great. This offensive line was moving people. You'll love to see that. Braylon Allen looked mediocre to bad, and outside of that 1 touchdown run, Breece Hall fans and owners celebrate and unite. Hopefully this is a good year from Breece, and I expect to keep him in locked and loaded as an RB1 for you guys, and if you drafted him as an RB2, even better. Like I mentioned, Garrett Wilson, he had a great game, had 9 targets, and that should just be a constant throughout the season. And then no one else really stood out completely on this offense. It's just going to be do it by committee. And they almost look like they started the year like they were the Navy college football team, just pounding the ground. 39 rushing attempts to 22 passes. That's probably how this team will look. I really like their new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, coming over from Lions, Ben Johnson's understudy. I like the game he called. So the Jets should be one of those exciting fantasy football teams this year that maybe was not as expected to do as well as they thought. That finished up our Steelers-Jets recap. We still have 2 1 o'clock games to get to, and this next one is my New York Football Giants versus the Washington Commanders. And no, it was not exciting at all for my Giants. We lost 21-6 and weren't able to score a single touchdown in this game. The offensive line looked horrible. The secondary looked bad. The coaching was terrible. We had all this energy, excitement, good vibes, but what does that really mean if you can't produce on the field? And it's the same thing for the last 3 years for this Giants. 0 touchdowns in the first game of the season. 3 straight years under Brian Daboll. Russell Wilson looked lost out there, looked like he was hearing footsteps constantly. The offensive line couldn't give him any time. No running back was able to make anybody miss and make an explosive rush. Russell Wilson, unfortunately, was our leading rusher at 37 years old or however old he is, and that's just unacceptable. Our rookie running back had 2 carries, -3 yards. We got to be better than that. Malik Neighbors, he's going to make a few plays here and there, but 5 catches, 70 yards on 12 targets, not an impressive debut at all. And Wandale, just way too many short targets, man. I feel like I don't even want this man on our football team anymore at this point, but he's going to have to play better and just be used differently. I don't like the screen passes at all to him. They're not an effective play at all for us, unfortunately. Theo Johnson, a guy I hyped up this offseason, I'm very disappointed with his week 1 performance. 2 drops, unacceptable. Just a really poor offensive performance and not really much to talk about other than that. Darius Slayton was a complete no-show. On the other side, Jaden Daniels, he looked great getting to his right hand, outside the pocket scrambling right. That's what Jaden Daniels does. He's known for it, and the Giants didn't do a good enough job executing that game plan, keeping him inside the pocket. It was annoying seeing him scramble out so much to his right-hand side and just find guys consistently. We were just giving up big plays on 2nd and 14, 3rd and 10. They were consistently converting on those 3rd and 2nd and longs, and we weren't able to really get after him. We brought him down 3 times, and the D-line was clearly the best unit on the field, but even the D-line was a bit underwhelming for game 1, especially with all the hype we saw with having supposedly the best defensive lineman in football, Dexter Lawrence, paired up with a top 3 prospect, Abdul Carter, and then Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau all working in, keeping them fresh throughout the whole games and wearing those tackles down and getting to the quarterback, but our defense just didn't look that good. Bill Krosky-Merritt, though, man, he really... What a game. 10 carries, out-carried Austin Eckler in the first game of the season. Many probably didn't expect that. 80 rushing yards, which leads all rookie running backs through 1 week, and he got a rushing touchdown. Just an impressive performance from Bill Krosky-Merritt, and honestly, you can almost just start this kid in fantasy already. I don't know how you can't. As your RB2, maybe you drafted him in that range anyway. Unless you started RB in the first 2 rounds, you should probably be getting him into your RB slot or at least a flex spot. Jaden Daniels getting it done on the ground. Like I said, he was scrambling out, and then he obviously can get it done with his legs so well. 11 carries for 68 yards. That's just great production to have from your quarterback in fantasy. He'll see 50-plus rushing yards nearly every week, which is awesome. Then Austin Eckler, a little bit of an underwhelming debut. He did solid, but the game script just didn't favor him. They didn't really have to pass the ball too much. He did see 3 catches for 31 yards, which was nice. And it was an average RB2 if you had to throw him in this week and you were excited to, for the potential of a touchdown in the early season with Bill working in. Many didn't know what his role would be, especially with Chris Rodriguez being ruled out. You thought that there might be more room for him to succeed. But honestly, it was really Deebo Samuel in this offense. He looked great. He got that rushing touchdown, which he does. That's what he's best at from the wide receiver position. He's just such a unique player like that, being able to take carries. But he saw 10 targets, and he looked good. 7 catches for 77 yards, and I expected him to be looking good from week 1. Terry McLaurin coming into the season with the hold-in and not practicing with his team all offseason, especially as an older player. I didn't expect him to have a solid week 1. He did have a great chance to have a really good week 1. Jaden just missed him on a deep ball. I'll expect better production going forward, though. Zach Ertz, of course, he scores against the Giants. As soon as our linebacker Micah McFadden goes down, they went right at our backup, and he got in the end zone. Nothing much really else to say, but just a terrible game for my Giants. Hate to see it. Really need to bounce back against the Cowboys next week. If not, the season's looking real grim. Next game, another weather delay, of course. In this short season, we've already seen major weather delays. Let's talk about that. The Jaguars and the Panthers. Really, we'll start with the Panthers. Unfortunately, tough debut for Bryce Young. Never seems to get in rhythm, and especially when you have a weather delay happen, that just takes you out of that flow that you had anything going anyway. He had 2 picks and a fumble. In the box score, doesn't read as a good look for Bryce. I'm expecting a lot better from him going forward, obviously. It was raining, lightning, just not a great week 1 game to start out the season. One of the few bright spots for this offense is their rookie wide receiver, who saw 9 targets, missed on a few tough throws. Bryce just missed bad on one of the throws, but he finished with 5 catches for 68 yards, which is really nice to see in just a week 1 production, seeing him get that much work. I was expecting a bigger game, honestly, against the poor Jacksonville defense, but with the weather and the stoppage in play, we saw things falter off. T-Mac, another guy you should be excited about that's a rookie coming in this year, and he should probably be locked into your starting lineup again next week, unless you're just in some really shallow league. And now Chuba Hubbard, he saw 16 carries on the ground, and then he also received a receiving touchdown, which was really nice to see for him at the end of the game. Really salvaged his fantasy day, getting that touchdown. And Chuba, he should be consistently involved in this offense. He's going to be the lead back going forward, and we'll see if they can improve his efficiency on the ground. I know they have a good O-line, and I'm surprised to see he ran as poor as he did. Now for Trevor Lawrence, he also had a pretty mediocre performance in game 1. Trevor Lawrence, he didn't even eclipse 200 passing yards, and he had only 1 touchdown and 1 pick. And they had Brian Thomas, their wide receiver, take an end-around carry for a touchdown. Got the kid involved in the rushing game, but that's unfortunately to the detriment of Trevor Lawrence's production. He targeted him on the first play early and took a deep shot to him. Nothing was really there. I honestly think he should have checked it down to Travis Hunter. But yeah, he saw 9 targets and only 1 catch. I don't really know what was going on. Maybe their connection was just off. I haven't played a full game together since long time last year. I'm very disappointed by Brian Thomas's production. Got bailed out by that rushing touchdown, obviously. This kid, he's a tremendous player, and he should definitely be locked into your lineup every week. The big news obviously comes with their running back room, though. They trade away Tank Bigsby, who saw 5 carries in week 1 and was very ineffective on his touches. So they feel confident in going ahead with Travis Etienne locked in as the alpha back now this year. And if you drafted Travis Etienne, you got to be ecstatic for this. This is what you hope for. One of those running backs who get traded away, and he would be able to retain that backfield for himself. Many thought Travis Etienne might be the guy getting traded away because he had the most value and pick value for another team. But the Jaguars saw his week 1 production, and they wanted to utilize him heavy. He had that 70-yard run, which was just an unbelievable play. Last year, he didn't reach 20-plus miles per hour on any carries, and he already did this year, which is just incredible to see. So clearly, Etienne was banged up last year like we knew, and he put in the work, and he's back healthy, and he looks good. Just a guy now to be really excited for this season. Bayashal Tootin, another guy, their rookie pick this draft class. This new ownership, they took Tootin in the 3rd round, and he ran a 4.340, a really exciting prospect. His one caveat is he's a fumbler, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, but he's a real sleeper pick and a guy I would target to trade for or on your waiver wire if he's not picked up yet. Definitely a guy I want to roster just in case anything happens. Plus, he could just be like Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, whoever can figure it out. We saw how effective the Buccaneers' rushing attack was last year. And then In the receiving room as well, going back there, Bretton Strange, the tight end, he looked great, man. I'm really excited what I saw from Bretton Strange. I think you should definitely pick him up if you need a tight end. He was one of the tight ends. He didn't really get involved much after the weather delay, but early on, Trevor Lawrence was going to him early and often, and he looked good on his catches. He was making people miss, just blocking leaving. Hunter Long got the touchdown, but if that goes to Bretton Strange, we might be looking at the number one tight end ad. And then for Travis Hunter, he saw 8 targets out there in his debut as a cornerback wide receiver hybrid, and he barely saw any cornerback snaps. It was very limited in his first game, but he did see a good bit of work as a wide receiver. Had a nice first catch. I saw not many big plays out of Travis Hunter week 1, and I'm expecting a better production going forward and maybe more intense route tree going forward as well. But the coach said that he was running all the right routes and he looked good out there, so that's what you want to hear from Liam Cohen, and they just should want to continue to use him more and more as the season moves along. And then De'Ami Brown, offseason acquisition, he fit in nicely, and he was their second leading receiver this week, actually, which cool to see. Good for you, De'Ami Brown. That wraps up our 1 o'clock slate. So let's move into that 4 o'clock window. We'll start with the rookie number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward, and the Tennessee Titans going to Denver to take on the Broncos. They honestly had a really good chance to win this game, man. I was so impressed by the film of Cam Ward in week 1. He got let down by his receivers time and time again. So many drops this game. So disappointing to see. Calvin Ridley, crucial drops throughout that game. Should have had a much better game. Should have honestly helped win them the game. Yeah, leading wide receiver. Unfortunately, only 29 receiving yards. That's just unacceptable. Cam Ward, man, he just didn't get any freaking help. And they were calling some really bad plays. His coach doesn't even know that an elbow down is same as 2 feet. He's lost. This team, man, the Titans, they just can't get it right since they lost Vrabel. I don't know what they were doing trading away A.J. Brown all those years ago. They're going to need a lot of better production out of their wide receiver group. Tony Pollard, he did all right, 18 for 60 on the ground. Not anything to be super excited about, but he did have a 29-yard reception, which is nice. Led the team, of course, 29 yards, and it's embarrassing. But I do want to mention rookie Alec Iaminor, who was getting targeted quite a bunch, and he had a drop problem going back to college, and he actually did drop one of his balls that I saw thrown to him. It's just exciting to see him getting targeted that high in his first game. I think he could be an exciting rookie prospect to monitor. Maybe a waiver wire stash if you have the room. Just a real tough overall loss for this team, and they had plenty of shots to win this game. Bo Nix, who we'll get into now. Bo Nix, real poor game. I watched this game quite a bit. And man, his interceptions were bad. He just did not look comfortable out there, especially that pick out of the half. I don't know what he was looking at, but they did eke out the win, and they had a huge play right before the half. He was able to connect with Courtland Sutton in the end zone, and Courtland Sutton made a great play on the ball. Courtland Sutton had 9 targets, 6 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Finished with a solid week 1 performance. He's an underrated veteran that is just a safe player, like I said, in my wide receiver tiers if you watched, and I'm not surprised that he scored week 1. Pretty solid game for Bo Nix, previous teammate dating back to Oregon. They played together. Troy Franklin, he got 6 targets, 4 catches for 44 yards. Nice to see him as involved as he was. Probably due to the fact that Marvin Mims was dealing with that groin leg injury, and Evan Ingram had to go out of the game twice, I believe. He was dealing with a little bit of pain in the game. He got banged up. So we'll see how he's doing this week of practice. And then RJ Harvey, he didn't really seem to be doing much of anything this game, and then he finally breaks off a 50-yard run showing why they drafted him, his explosiveness, his big playability. That's exciting for this offense. They have a good O-line that should open up those holes eventually by the end of the game. And J.K. Dobbins, just a really good guy to be that grinder and take those between the 20s carries and those goal line touches. He broke off a really nice touchdown run that I was excited to see him do. He was a guy that I liked at his price this year for fantasy. And Bo Nix, he had 8 carries, but he wasn't really able to muster much on those. He's going to need to be much more productive on the ground and through the air. I was really worried about Bo Nix's production this season being a more conservative offense, leaning way more heavily into the run game. He did throw the ball 40 times, surprisingly, but they did have 30 carries, and I think in most games, they're going to be looking to lean on that running attack. For fantasy, real quick, RJ Harvey is like a borderline flex as of right now, and same with J.K. Dobbins. You could definitely get him in as an RB2 borderline flex. Whoever gets a touchdown will probably be solid, and the one that doesn't is probably a little underwhelming. You're going to hope for, throughout this season, RJ Harvey to really overtake Tyler Bidet and get that receiving workload going his way and be more fantasy relevant. And then no one else really is fantasy necessary in your starting lineup at this moment. All right, let's move along to our next 4 o'clock game. A crazy ending of a game. What a week this was. Some quite interesting games we had. And this game was the 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. Brock Purdy, he started the game pretty hot, finding George Kittle often and early, and George Kittle looked great. And then, of course, like George Kittle fashion, he gets hurt early on into the game, pulls his hammy. Now he's on IR. This team is just a mess. Brock Purdy apparently has a shoulder injury, might be missing next week. Christian McCaffrey, though, great first week, 31 touches and 32 opportunities. Just incredible for him. He probably had the most expected fantasy points. He didn't look great on the ground, but that doesn't really matter when he's getting 9 catches and he's just a PPR GOAT. As long as the calves hold up and if they don't just fall apart and crumple on him, he'll be a locked-in RB1 this year. Should be a top 5 running back based on his production from week 1. And then Ricky Pearsall, really impressive week 1. A guy I was really high on this year. 7 targets, but only hold in 4 of them. But that didn't matter. 108 yards on 4 catches, 27 yards a catch. Just a real impressive player. Brock Purdy seems to like him a lot. Even if it is Mac Jones next week, especially with all these injuries. Shawan Jennings got a shoulder injury banged up, and he might be able to be cleared to play by week 2. But yeah, losing George Kittle, already Ayuk out. All these backup running backs are all banged up. And they did bring in Brian Robinson, who looked pretty average. But Ricky Pearsall, man, to the moon. He might have been a bench guy for you based on where you drafted him. But yeah, get this man in your starting lineup ASAP. I got to shout out Jake Tonges. I don't even know him before this week, and he comes in, fills in for George Kittle, next man up mentality, and makes a hell of a play in the end zone, catching the game-winning touchdown and saving Brock Purdy. Honestly, Brock Purdy made a great play on it, but saving Brock Purdy by making an incredible play in the end zone in traffic. And then Sam Darnold, such a tough scene for him. We'll get to this game later, but yeah, seeing his Vikings win and he loses his first game and they only put up 13 points and he has 150 yards passing and no touchdown passes, looking pretty lost out there. Not really able to string together too many great drives. And then, of course, we have to mention this backfield split. It was really weird. It was Ken Walker to start the game, and then Zach Charbonnet was just looking much better on the ground than Ken Walker, and he got into the end zone, and then Ken Walker was just getting consistently stuffed every carry. It looked like the blocking just refused to block for him. So he was averaging 2 yards per carry out there, consistently getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. Felt bad for the kid at some points. He did out-touch Jack Charbonnet 5-1 in the fourth quarter, which was nice to see, and maybe a good omen going forward. Maybe they were working him in slowly with the foot soreness he'd been dealing with all camp. This backfield is going to be one we're going to have to keep an eye on all year long. Who knows how it's going to shake out? It seemed to be that they loved Kenneth Walker, but Zach Charbonnet is a really good player, and he definitely seems to have earned his role on this team and getting those snaps on the field. In the receiver room, it was really just all Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's the only real name that you want to talk about. One of the few guys to reach 100 yards, 13 targets, 9 catches, 124 yards, leaving off right where he left off. 124 of Sam Darnold's 150 receiving yards. That's actually just mind-blowing to think about. 82.5% of the team's receiving yards. Okay, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I see you. And then no one else really involved at all. Cooper Kupp looked washed as heck and not good. So that stinks, but the only real downfall was Jackson fumbled the ball twice and lost one of them, so he's got to focus on hanging on to the football. Same thing with Sam Darnold, can't be fumbling the football either. Really turned into a pumpkin there at the end. Sam Pumpkin, if you know about that. Shout out my boys. Jackson Smith and Jigba locked in every week starter, easy player to lock in, wide receiver 1 territory this year, and everyone else on the Seattle Seahawks seems to be tentative right now, even the running back. Ken Walker, you obviously got to play him when he's healthy. He has the ability to have game-breaking plays in any moment, so it sucks to see how his week 1 went, but you're just going to have to hold on to that hope that you had for his season this year, especially with the new coaching changes. Now, this next game, this was a shocker for me, and I watched a lot of this game because I have Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy in multiple leagues. And that was the Detroit Lions Green Bay Packers game. And man, this Packers team had a point to prove this year. They're coming out with a bit of a vengeance. After that Micah trade, they're clearly going all in on this Super Bowl contending season. And they're a real Super Bowl or bust team. Shout out to First Things First, S-Bob Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, he got it done in this game, man. He didn't really have to throw too much in this game because they were just dominating the ball so well and just moving the ball consistently early on in the game, had a dominant lead right from the start of the game. Jaden Reed really surprised me in this one, coming out looking pretty healthy. That's what I'll say. I was surprised to see how he was moving and he caught a touchdown pass, 3 catches for 45 yards. He's just the hardest player to know when to play. I would have never told you to play Jaden Reed, and of course he gets a touchdown in his first game. He's so hard to know when to play. They have Romeo Dobbs, who looked good on his targets. He had a nice deep catch, and they targeted him towards the end zone, which was nice to see. Then they also have Tucker Kraft, who looked good. He caught a touchdown. He's got to be more involved in this team going forward, in my opinion. And then Matthew Golden, pretty quiet debut. We'll see how they increase his role going forward. So there's just so many mouths to feed in this Green Bay offense. It's really going to be hard to know when to start Jaden Reed, especially. Matthew Golden, I'd probably wait another week or two before I'm looking to get him in my lineup right now. There's just so many questions about this offensive breakdown and how they want to utilize these guys going forward. But once he shows you something, get him in that lineup immediately. Josh Jacobs, of course, he continues his rushing success and getting another touchdown in the regular season. And that was great to see as a Josh Jacobs owner, because outside of that production, it really wasn't much. Jared Goff, though, he struggled, man. That pick was brutal. He was very accurate in this game, but they just couldn't get many yards. They were dicking them in the run game, man. That running game looked terrible. They really looked like they were missing Frank Ragnow and Ben Johnson in this first week. Whatever it was, they were a little stale, and it was definitely a disappointing result from a Lions fan perspective. I would say they definitely have better games ahead. This Packers defense looked like a Super Bowl caliber defense. Amon-Ra, he looked good when he caught the ball, but he's just got to get more involved. Only 4 catches for 45 yards. Same with Jameson Williams, barely involved in this game. 4 catches, 23 yards. That's just not good enough, especially when they hyped him up all offseason, coming off the big extension right before the season started. Wanted to see a bigger game out of him. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously a PPR demon, 10 catches, but 31 yards. The lowest receiving production output on 10 catches we've ever seen, dating back to how far stats go. So just crazy to see them have such a poor performance as a Lions believer this year. Even with the loss of Ben Johnson, I thought they could still be able to pick back up where they left off on offense, and it just wasn't quite the case. So we'll have to monitor the Lions definitely a little bit closer than I would have hoped, but you're obviously keeping Jahmyr Gibbs locked in. Monty, I don't know if you have to play him necessarily even as a flex option. He's definitely a good option if Gibbs goes down and for the bye week players, but not necessarily a guy I'm in love with. Sam Laporta, though, great first game, man. He really looked good with the ball in his hands. He looked like he was back to his rookie year self, and 6 catches, 79 yards is just great to see. And then obviously the Isaac TeSlaa catch at the end of the game, really impressive stuff from the kid. I'm sure they're going to get this kid on the field a little bit more as the season goes on. So he's a guy to keep an eye on, especially if any injuries happen to any of these wide receivers. They gave up a lot of capital and seemed to be really invested in him. That was the Lions game. And for our final 4 o'clock slate game that I'm going to cover here, we had the Los Angeles Rams at home versus the Houston Texans. This was an ugly one too. Very low scoring. But Stafford did play very well in this game. He was accurate. He put the ball in good spots. He dealt with the loss of Puka Nacua for a few plays in and out of the lineup due to that head injury he sustained. He got crushed on the eye, and it was like eye was bleeding, and then he had to repatch it. Puka Nacua, he's just unbelievable. What an absolute demon out there. Just throws his body around. Not a care in the world. Man will just go up for anything, and he makes plays consistently. 11 targets, hauled in 10 of them for 130 yards. Absolutely stellar debut for Puka Nacua. Locked in, loaded. And then Devontae Adams, he looked really good as well. I really liked what I saw from him. He was really getting fed early and often, but then it seemed to trail off. And he only hauled in 4 of his 8 targets. But I expect that to increase going forward and them to be more on the same page as the year goes on. And then we got to see Kyron Williams command this backfield like he does. Despite the draft pick of Jarquez Hunter, he didn't receive a single carry. Blake Corum only had 1 carry. He saw almost all the RB touches. So that's great to see for the Kyron owners, especially after he got paid. And then on the Texans side of the ball, it was really disappointing. Their O-line just looked really poor. They couldn't have anything set up to develop, and Nico Collins unfortunately had one of his worst games I've seen him have in a while. He came away with 3 catches for 25 yards on only 5 targets, and he just needs to be more involved in getting better looks. It seems that they didn't really trust their rookies as much as they wanted to, and then with the loss of Christian Kirk right before the game, that really hurt their offensive production, it seems. They definitely could have used Christian Kirk out there commanding those slot targets. Jalen Noel still needs time, only seeing 2 targets and 1 catch for 7 yards in the whole game. With Christian Kirk out there, he probably have saw saw a much bigger target share than that, and it made Justin Watson have to take on a much bigger role, and Christian Kirk is clearly a better player than Justin Watson. On the ground, Nick Chubb was the leader in carries, but I'm not expecting much from Nick Chubb this year. I think as the year goes on, they're going to want to increase their touches of their rookie Woody Marks, and eventually, hopefully, we'll see Joe Mixon return. Who knows? But if not, Chubb is the guy that I'm not looking to play ever, really. He's a bye-week fill-in at best. I'm definitely not a Nick Chubb guy this year. And then CJ Stroud getting it done, 30 yards on the ground, which was nice to see because he really was very unproductive through the air. Didn't have any passing touchdowns and actually had a pick. So CJ Stroud, let's hope that this was just a tough week one against a tough D-line, and he can really bounce back next week and get Nico Collins going again. When Nico's getting the ball, that's when this offense is at their best. So that's our last 4 o'clock game, and we'll be right back to discuss the last 2 games. Now, finally, for our final 2 games, the Sunday night and Monday night games, let's get into the best game of the year. Yeah, you heard me right. Best game of the year. That's what this is going to be, and that's Baltimore versus the Buffalo Bills. And wow, man, I watched this game every single play, and I was just enamored watching this game. There's just levels to football teams, man, and these two are definitely 2 of the best teams in all of the National Football League. It's just so clear to me when you watch these guys play. These quarterbacks are so elite, and I just want to have that kind of play for my football team at some point. Lamar Jackson, we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens and their epic collapse. Lamar Jackson is just unbelievable. One of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. If he is able to get it done in January ever, he's going to be a locked-in top 10 Hall of Fame quarterback. He's already a Hall of Fame quarterback with his 2 MVPs, but if this man can get it done into playoffs ever, man, he could be as high as top 5. What he can do on the ground is just like nothing I've ever seen. This is the greatest running back, quarterback, rushing combination you'll ever see in your entire life of the NFL's history. It will never get better than this. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry, aged 31 season, with 18 carries for 169 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Would have had even more rushing yards had he not had that fumble, which just unfortunately was a huge momentum swinger and really turned the events of the game. Unbelievable game. You can't put it on Derrick Henry at all. That's really all on the defense for giving up that many points. 22-6, yeah. They couldn't get outscored by 16 points. They needed to hold them. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. That's such a poor loss. And then, yeah, like giving the ball to Zay Flowers on that second down carry. Why are we taking the ball out of Lamar's hands and Henry's hands? I know he fumbled, but let's keep the ball on the ground with those 2, please. John Harbaugh also 17-plus point leads blown. Like, just not a good stat to be a part of. But man, this Ravens offense for fantasy football, man, should we be excited as heck. Zay Flowers, we got to pay attention to Zay Flowers for sure. I liked him a lot this year as a mid-round target, but not like someone I thought had the upside to be a wide receiver 1. 9 targets, 7 receptions, and 143 receiving yards. Just unreal production for the kid. Not even a single other receiver was really relevant. Hopkins made that unbelievable touchdown grab, but he only saw those 2 targets, and obviously that was a huge play, but unfortunately didn't end up meaning anything in the end. And then Derrick Henry was really their whole game plan. Lamar was getting it done on the ground, and he even scored a rushing touchdown, which is great to see. Lamar sometimes, his touchdown ceiling has been capped due to running back usage near the goal line. Unfortunately, he gets a few scramble touchdowns, but he's not a guy that they typically feature near the goal line. So hopefully Lamar can keep that rushing touchdown production up going forward. I expect a lot more from Rashad Bateman going forward as well. Really pretty invisible in this game. Same with Mark Andrews. With no likely, you would have hoped for early season production as a fantasy owner. And I'm definitely hitting the panic button on Mark Andrews after that, seeing that week 1 target, 1 catch, 5 yards. Really into blocks so often. Just not what you want to see, especially in such a high-scoring game, to not be involved at all like that, and how he ended last year as well. And then we got to get into the Buffalo Bills. What a performance. Josh Allen proving to be why he earned that MVP last year. If you didn't feel he was the deserving MVP, this proved it and was the icing on the cake for it. Really unbelievable performance from Josh Allen. Almost 400 passing yards. Had to put the team on his back and just carry them. 46 attempts. Just making play after play. Every single time Josh Allen came onto the field in that fourth quarter, it felt like they were going to make something happen, and they did, and they were making miraculous play after miraculous play. And James Cook, he had a solid game as well. He had a nice catch. He broke a huge run towards the end. Very heavily involved in the receiving game, which was nice to see if you have James Cook as a fantasy owner. And then 13 carries for 44 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown as well. Josh Allen getting in twice on the ground because that's what he does, especially near the goal line. He's just going to be a monster there. And then Keon Coleman, a sophomore breakout, it looks like. 11 targets in his first game, making a hell of a play to catch that touchdown. 100 receiving yards, one of 6 guys, I believe, to have 100 receiving yards. And he should be locked in as a every week flex or even wide receiver 2 at this point. Like, I like him over Khalil Shakir. I think he has a much higher ceiling. A bunch of these guys saw like a heavy target load because it was such a high-paced, high-scoring game and they had to throw so much. So in a more neutral game script, we'll see how the chips actually fall. I was really impressed with also Dalton Kincaid. He was one of the highest-scoring tight ends this week, and he really looked like he was back to his old self. He looked good out there. He was making plays, got in the end zone. That was a nice throw by Josh Allen and a nice tight window grab by Dalton Kincaid. So I'm excited for Dalton Kincaid going forward, and I think he should be a startable tight end for you. I know he was drafted really high last year and he went really late this year. Hopefully you snagged him late and he could be a solid guy for you going forward. This game had so many ups and downs and big plays, and as a football fan, this is what you ask for. Games like this, 41-40, down to the wire, the best quarterbacks on the biggest stage making the best plays they can, putting their team in incredible situations, and obviously it's heartbreak for one team and a joyous celebration for the other. This is going to be interesting to look back on in the standings and like first place and seeding. I don't even think it's that bad if Baltimore doesn't win their division. I think they just need to be clicking perfectly at the right time come playoffs. They were one of my potential Super Bowl picks. It's always tough making a Super Bowl pick out of the AFC, but I really thought that this might be the year for the Ravens. And of course, coaching, that Lamar Harbaugh connection, it might not last much longer. So we'll see. And now, the final game of the week, the Monday Night Football game, looked off to such a hot start. Chicago versus Minnesota, one of our classic divisional rivalries. At home for the Bears, J.J. McCarthy in the clutch spoils Ben Johnson's home debut. And you hate to see it as a guy who's really high on the Bears this year. But also love to see it as a guy who has J.J. McCarthy as his most owned best ball quarterback. Really was worried about that through about 3 quarters, but J.J. McCarthy, rushing touchdown, looked good on the ground eventually when he made plays with his legs, and hit a really nice touchdown. His 2 touchdown passes were actually really well designed and really nice throws. That pass to Aaron Jones was a dot, and that pass was a tight window throw, and Justin Jefferson, he does what he does, making tight window catches, contested grabs in the end zone. A great play call that they had drawn up for that defensive formation that Dennis Allen had put them in. Really well coached game from Kevin O'Connell, especially in that second half. Not pressing with his rookie quarterback even after they threw a pick and just relying on that run game to keep them in the game later. That defense really stepped up big time. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason split the snaps pretty evenly, and Jordan Mason, he looked great on the ground. As a Jordan Mason owner, if you drafted him, I'd be pretty excited about him this year. I think you'll be able to get him into your starting lineup if need be in a pinch, or if you drafted poorly at the top or you went 0 RB, I think you can get him into your lineup as soon as next week. Aaron Jones also, he did what he did in Green Bay basically. He wasn't that efficient on the ground at all, unfortunately, this week, but he was getting deep targets multiple times throughout this game, and he caught that deep touchdown pass that I mentioned late in the game for the go-ahead touchdown to win them the game. Not much else really standing out. Jefferson only finished with 44 yards. Outside of that touchdown, he really didn't do much. And then no one else really was productive on this offense because J.J. McCarthy had such a poor first half. So we'll look to see how he rebounds next week, and maybe he can start a little bit quicker. For the Bears, though, it was literally the complete opposite. Caleb Williams made me think he might be the second coming of Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, whoever, the GOAT, whatever you want to call him, whoever you think the greatest quarterback is. That's what Caleb Williams looked like on the first drive. Heck of a scripted play calling series from Ben Johnson coming out the gate. Just Caleb looked so comfortable. He completed every single pass on that first drive. Actually completed his first 10 passes. Everything looked like it was going smoothly, and especially after they got that pick 6 when they went up 17-6, it looked like everything was going smooth. But after his first incompletion and when they went for it on 4th down, it really looked like it affected his whole mood and changed the way he felt. I'm just really disappointed with how he finished that game. Honestly, if you remove that first possession of the game, that first series, he really played horrible, in my opinion. And as a Caleb fantasy owner, just so hard seeing him be at his best and how great he can be, and then seeing him just zip balls way too hard and miss guys and look a little bit frazzled and unfocused at points. But the biggest positive, you'll have to say, is his ability in the pocket to scramble out of the pocket. He had no design runs really at all, but when he was getting pressure, he was dancing in the pocket, and then when he got outside the pocket, he was accelerating. He looked fast. He looked faster than he looked last year by a lot, in my opinion. They clearly worked on Caleb being a runner and wanted to utilize that aspect of his game much more, and it really looked good, and that's going to be helpful for fantasy owners if he can be an effective runner like he was. He actually got his first rushing touchdown in his career this game. DeAndre Swift, they gave him 17 carries, and it just felt like too much, honestly. They really needed another running back eventually. This team is going to have to attack that in the offseason. Maybe with Roche Johnson coming back eventually, he can be more effective. They did try to get DJ Moore involved in the rushing game a little bit as well, but it wasn't very effective. DJ Moore, though, he really should have had a much better fantasy day than this. If you have DJ Moore, I know the box score says 5 targets, 3 catches, 68 yards, but those 2 targets he missed him, one easily could have been a touchdown. The other one was a big 4th down conversion that he could have hit him on as well. So you easily could have saw a 15, 20-point fantasy day out of DJ Moore and a great day, but obviously we're stuck with the poor performance, and then he fumbled on the final play, trying to lateral when they were down 3 to make a play to win the game. Olamide Kias, he was pretty involved week 1, out-snapping and out-targeting both Loveland and Luther Burden. Unfortunate to see that as a fan of those 2 prospects. I want to see them more utilized going forward, especially Colston Loveland. I was disappointed with the way they utilized him, especially the way they talked him up this offseason. I expected him to have a bigger role week 1, and he only saw 2 catches for 12 yards. So hopefully they're able to take advantage of Colston Loveland more, because he did look for Colston at 4 times, and they only connected once. And Colston was able to haul in both his targets, even the one that was a little behind him. He made a nice grab on. We'll keep our eye on their usage going forward. Colston Loveland, definitely hang on to him. Don't have to start him right now. There are good enough tight ends on the waiver. You can take it slow with him. Unfortunately, I was hoping you could utilize him right away, but it doesn't seem that's the case. And then Roma Dunza, he had 9 targets, and he made a few nice grabs, and one really nice one on the sidelines, and then he obviously had that touchdown catch at the end of the game to make it a closer game and look better in the box score for him. It was right after DJ Moore went down to an injury. Roughing the passer got them real close to the goal line too. So it was nice to see, but definitely want to see this passing attack be much more productive. Only 210 passing yards for Caleb. Just missed on too many good opportunities. Just lost himself out there throughout the whole game. Unbelievable by JJ McCarthy. Great comeback. And that wraps up every single game. We've now finished talking about every single game. Guys to target, I'd be looking at guys like Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas, or Nico Collins, if any of them are panicking on them. Who else could I say to target? Dylan Sampson was exciting if you can get him for cheap or if he's on your waiver wire. Any of the Lions pass catchers, I really like them. Maybe Matthew Golden or Travis Hunter you could target. Some of those guys who had a good target share but really didn't see incredible production. Just guys that you might want to look to trade for. Even like Chris Olave, he had a really nice target share. Drake London, if you can get him because he got hurt and maybe that guy's scared off by the injury, that would be really nice. Guys to maybe trade away. Potentially a guy like Jerry Jeudy, what I saw from Harold Fannin and Cedric Tillman, and I think David Njoku will be more involved. If you can package Jerry Jeudy for a better player, I like that. Any more guys? Maybe even Mike Evans. He had a solid game, but it seems that Egbuka is like the clear alpha right now to me. You don't have to move Mike Evans. He's not like a must trade, but if you can upgrade him, I'd like that. And then certain guys that I'd be hitting the panic button on just a little bit. Guys like Isaiah Pacheco, who I was a little bit worried about coming into this year. His snap share and his overall workload wasn't too great. Austin Eckler, a guy I'm a little bit worried about, especially after week 1 where Bill saw as many touches as he did. That's a guy that might be phased out. He's a little older. There weren't too many guys that I'd be looking to drop just yet. The waiver wire this week doesn't stick out completely. There's obviously a few names that if you're in dire need of guys, there's guys like I mentioned, I'll recap them real quick. Quentin Johnston, Sean Booty, Dylan Sampson, even certain quarterbacks like Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, Daniel Jones, even Jordan Love. He didn't have a high production, but I like their offense. I like what I saw from the Green Bay Packers. And then the tight ends, Brenton Strange, Harold Fannin, Jawan Johnson are definitely guys in consideration for pickup as well. So with all that in mind, I hope that you can take all this information information, and this really helped if you weren't able to catch every game or dive into the stats like I was over this weekend in the past few days for you guys. Hopefully this really was a help and you can take my advice. I'm here to make sure that you have the best possible season and you get those waiver pickups and you target those undervalued guys to make sure that your team is clicking right at the right moments for the playoffs. It's not about being successful just early on in the season or middle of the season or towards the end of the regular season. You want to have your team clicking for the playoffs, and I'm going to show you what it takes to do it. And if you continue to tune in here, you're going to get better and become a better fantasy player and have the knowledge and understand the strategies that are necessary to win you your league. All right, guys. Thank you to all my fans as always. I love you guys for tuning in. You guys are the best. Especially my OGs tuning in for day ones and all the new viewers. I love you guys. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another breakdown of the games. Very excited to talk about football. As you can tell, this season's going to be a great one. I just know it.